Welcome to Shanna's and Jamie's Tea Talk.
All right, welcome back to Shanna and Jamie talking about our experience in healthcare, professional schools, and today we're going to talk about work-life balance and self-care. It's definitely a big journey that we've been going on, and I think that's actually the biggest challenge of medical school, personally,
for sure.
And I think pharmacy school is that it's not so much the academics. That's something that it is challenging a bit to adapt to the workload and stuff, but it's quite intuitive and there's a lot of tips out there. But I think adapting to how you find your life and not letting your school take over all your time or all your extracurriculars take your time, and also I feel like it also changes you as a person because you're learning a lot and you're really changing your communication skills and your values are really coming to something that you're trying to figure out, and so you really change as a person. So it kind of puts all your work-life balance into flux. It puts this kind of self-identity and self-care into flux, and so that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so the first topic is regarding making time for yourself. So it's, as Shanna mentioned, it's really difficult to balance your social life and school life, and sometimes even work. So first, we want to talk about the aspect of friendship.
Yeah, that's something I wish I had known, back before I even started med, was to learn to really prioritize that time with people. I think at some point I was just, especially like, my third year before I went to med school, I was so focused on getting into med school. Everything was about studying. If I wasn't studying, I had to do work on my extracurriculars or work on my research, and I had to, prep for MMIs and read, doing right. And so I was so focused on that. I felt like I genuinely regret not prioritizing people in my life more, because in the end I could reapply to med school, but the time with people is something that I really couldn't get back. And I felt like I'm very grateful that some of these people were so understanding, that they know this is like what I have to do, and this kind of was a critical period. But I still think in being grateful, I could have prioritized time. So would I really miss out on anything if I didn't spend that one night studying? Like, no. I think like in the long term it would have been meaningful to be hanging out or like being there for people or celebrating someone's special thing. So I think that's something I would change, and that's something now I try to do more. Trying to make that time every so often, reaching out and see how a friend's doing, and just like hanging out, just being 100% there, and not thinking about like there's an exam next week or thinking about this and that. Just like if I'm there, I'm there. And so being there for people, realizing how important that is.
Yeah, for sure. And like Shanna mentioned, just being like fully present when you're hanging out is really important. And we understand that for students, it's really difficult to make time outside of school or work to have separate hangouts. Hanging out for, several times a week may be difficult for a lot of students. So one of the ways that we recommend is just find ways to incorporate your friends in your work or in your studies or your hobbies. So for example, you can have like study sessions together, or you can go to, like for us, we usually go to chat time and we just have some study session, and during like in between like those breaks we also catch up, so it's good for both.
Or we do things like go on a workout together, which I think is really fun. I love doing that with people because you're getting a bit of sweat in and you're also hanging out with each other. I think it's like find that balance. I think a really core part of friendship is that you need to have time where you're actually talking and you're actually sharing and listening. Because I think, like, for example, if you're always studying and you're never talking to each other, you're not there. But I don't think 100% of your time together has to be, directly talking. Sometimes it can just be together in each other's company.
Exactly.
And keeping each other company is a big thing. And I think a big one, again, supporting each other's initiatives is a big one, which I'm really grateful for my friends doing that for me. And just like, when that's meaningful. That's something I didn't used to do again before, but now, for example, in med, some of my friends were in MedPlit. And so realizing that, maybe I'm not a huge theater geek and I don't really understand what I'm appreciating, but, because my friend is part of that, then I want to be there and support them. And I think that's just, it's more symbolic in a way.
For sure. And speaking of doing things together with your friends, like hobbies is another big topic that students struggle with. And I guess commonly we think of hobbies as being good at sports or being good at music, but that's not what it has to be. Like hobbies it's not just limited to visual arts or music. And Shanna can talk more about how we can incorporate hobbies into our life and our profession.
I was feeling like all I really was doing was on my side, I was doing research and I'm really passionate about like health advocacy and, promoting health for people who are unable to access it because they're disadvantaged or something like that. And these are all like healthcare related things. And I was like, I'm not doing life right. I have to be doing, XYZ. I have to be a talented pianist. I don't know, right? And so I was really worried about this. So I talked to a upper year resident, and I said, like, what do you do? Like, how do you find that balance? I'm so worried that if I don't have this, like, non-medicine hobby, am I going to be burned out? And so her reply to me was really comforting. She says for some people that's going to be their non-medicine hobby is going to be their sanity thing. So it's going to be their cycling, or it's going to be their running. But she says for a lot of people, because they love this career so much and they love everything related to it, it's actually quite natural to be having all your hobbies somewhat related to it. It's not going to be, you're not doing your job. It's different, right? So it's just related. So for her example, she was doing research, she's into mentoring, and she sits on like related committees. And so I was like, oh, that was really comforting to me because that's very similar to my life. And I think it's also a little bit relieving because sometimes I feel a little bit guilty if I'm doing something not, that has like zero relationship to my main career. I'm like, oh man, am I like wasting my time because time is so precious? And I don't always want to be picking everything just for the sake of my CV or for what ahead, but I do like to think in hand, is there some way that it links back to my career? And so I do so I actually think it's perfectly acceptable as a healthcare student to have your hobbies be related somewhat to your career.
Like, as long as it's not stressful, as long as you truly enjoy what you're doing, I think that can be a hobby. And then in terms of like balancing, work-life balance. So balance doesn't necessarily have to be 50-50. It really depends on the person. So for me, I would say it's more 80-20. I don't know, what about you, Shanna?
I would say
80-20. So it's different for everyone. So you don't have to think it's 50-50.
Yeah,
it depends. To
add on that one, I think a myth that I had when I came into medical school, I thought you have to be 50-50 all the time, which actually makes no sense, right? Because when it's your week before your exam, you're not going to be like 50-50, or, there's all the conference deadlines or something. You're not going to be 50-50 that week. That just doesn't make sense. Instead, I like to think of it a way as everything like comes and goes in waves, and everything is like, it's a season, like seasons of a year, right? So, in the first part, when you start medical school or pharmacy school, you're trying to make friends. And so right now, that season of your life is just social life, maybe is more of a priority. And then the next season of your life is, it's an upcoming midterm. And so school, it's going to be an 80-20, and the 80 is going to be school. And so that, the balance has reversed. But, say something happens and, your best friend, something happens to them and they get sick. And so maybe, that moment, it's going to be the other balance. And so it just like depends. And so I think it's okay to just like let things come in waves. And so, you don't always have to be perfectly working out and you perfectly have to meal prep, and then you also have your research perfectly done. Like, I think it's okay to be like, right now it's really busy with research, so I'm going to let a workout drop or something like that. And so that's the way to find, I think, to keep your sanity instead of pressuring yourself to be perfect, right?
Yeah, it's not supposed to be stressful. And also, like, it's just about like a trends in like long-term perspective. Like, obviously, if in an exam period, you're not going to be doing it 50-50. But overall, like, if your balance is satisfying for you, then that's good enough. You don't have to compare yourself with others.
All right. Would you like to take us away on self-care?
Yes. So our last topic that I'm going to talk about is self-care. So self-care is really important as healthcare professionals and future pharmacists and doctor. You're caring for others, but it's also important to take care of yourself. And one aspect we want to talk about that we talked about a lot is exercise. So I find that for me, like in first year, I was struggling with getting used to pharmacy school and the workload. So I neglected exercise, and I would just go home, school, and that was like a repeated pattern. But then I felt like since I didn't exercise, there wasn't an outlet for me to de-stress, to let go of my worries. So in second year, I tried to incorporate a bit more exercise, like maybe like once a week, or ask Shanna to go work out with me. And I found that even though it's like a small change, it was definitely impactful by having like a set schedule, and also by exercising, even if it's like an hour per week. It's something to look forward to, and something different. Something more exciting than studying and working. So I think it's really important to implement or incorporate exercise in your routine.
And then for me, for exercise, I find that I need exercise to sleep well. So I do feel it. So if I haven't exercised for like a few weeks, I definitely feel more restless. I stay up more, just overthinking and ruminating all day. If you guys are anyone else is an overthinker, I feel you. That's me. But when you're like so exhausted from exercising and you're like ready to hit the sack, then like you're actually pretty good and you sleep a little bit better. Yeah, I mean, on the topic of sleep, I guess that's something that is really a difference is like I am a night owl and I would love to stay up, but you realize that like usually as the more and more, the longer and longer you're working, when you instead of like you think you're working 5 hours in the night, but if you're actually just like half falling asleep, you're actually not that productive, and staying up is not that helpful, to be honest. You have a comment on that?
Yeah, I guess like I'm like a person who needs like enough sleep, like 8 hours plus sleep. So I feel like just knowing yourself, just acknowledging that maybe like this time isn't the best for you to study, just incorporating breaks in between. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with sleeping more, but having a more efficient study time. So it's definitely personal preference, and as I mentioned before, no need to compare.
I remember you mentioned that before when you were first starting, you were worrying that you were sleeping too much.
Yeah,
compared
exactly.
to your peers. Comparison
So
is...
yeah, now I sleep however much I want as long as I get the work done. Yeah.
On the topic of that one, related caffeine use, do you have feelings about that? I feel like I have an evolving use, and so I think I know caffeine free is this big trend going around. I personally think like sometimes you need that caffeine because we have 8 a.m. classes, or especially going into third year next year and practicum, you're gonna do some really weird overnight shifts. Sometimes you really need this drug, basically, right, of caffeine to kind of help you with that balance. But I do think for me, realizing the relationship with caffeine is that realizing, am I using this caffeine because I'm not to basically make up for not having good sleep, and realizing that maybe instead it's time to actually prioritize sleep and catching up on sleep and having better sleep habits, as opposed to like using like coffee as a substitute. So I think using it, but then also evaluating the core problem behind it, and not using it as a band-aid for a bigger problem.
Exactly. And speaking of caffeine, eating is definitely another important topic for students. Like both of us, we have a lot of meetings during lunchtime, and we just noticed that like since we're so engaged during the meeting, we often miss times to eat lunch properly. And so that's, I'm sure a lot of students also face this as well. A lot of club meetings, a lot of faculty meetings, they happen at lunchtime, like 12 to 1. So it's easy for us to forget, but nutrition is also another important aspect to help you with studying as well as maintain your personal health. You need the energy and you need the proper nutrition to be able to function in life and with their daily routines.
Yeah, so that's something I definitely am terrible at doing. Like you said, the lunch meetings, and then sometimes I'll like wake up, late, and so commute into school or whatever, so like I don't eat breakfast or something, and I really feel it, say you skip breakfast and then you've also skipped lunch and it's 4 o'clock and you haven't had your first meal yet and you're like in clinicals in the hospital or whatever, and you're like, and so I definitely feel myself going to hypoglyc at times, and like you feel it, and so I was like, wow, that's not a really good way to go. I really feel like for me it was like freshman minus 15 starting with the busyness of everything, and so I try not to do that because I think that's really bad for you in terms of health. But so like some of the stuff I find is like sometimes it really isn't appropriate to eat. So something we talked about is like sometimes you can eat, if you're gonna have a lunch meeting and you are having a leave a letter class, and the class just before your meeting, you like try to eat something or eat half of that lunch, and then after the meeting's over, you eat the other half of your lunch, or you purposely bring a lunch that is eatable.
Yeah. Easy to eat.
Yeah.
Not too messy.
Like if you have to like construct your like burrito before you eat it, that's going to take you forever to eat, and you're not going to have time to eat it. But something for me is sometimes like no matter how many like ways I like hack it, it's just like it just doesn't work that way. I think that's something people will find like in practical stuff is like, and because it's not appropriate to eat in the hospital setting, so that's something that's really tricky. So something I like to do, and take it as you will. I know some people don't like to eat a lot for breakfast, but I personally like to eat a lot for breakfast, and that really helps me, and that kind of harks back to when I was in high school, like doing like sports in the morning and stuff, and so I will eat a lot. I will like, eat straight up breakfast, like for breakfast I'll have rice, I'll have like meat, I'll have like veggies. It'll be like a huge thing, and then that will kind of tie me on long enough until I can have, if I know I probably won't get to eat
early
like
afternoon
4 or something,
yeah.
Right? Yeah. And so I definitely think though on that hand is like trying not to like eat too many unhealthy snacks. Like I really feel it when I eat too many unhealthy snacks, and like it's like because of those, like sometimes that meeting you're like, I'm gonna have this like really like sweet thing as a substitute. I think if you're really feeling yourself going to hypoglyc, then yeah, take it. But if you if you're like trying to like if you can make that choice for the healthier food, it will like prevent you from having a crashing, and like you don't want to feel crashing and burning. It just feels like kind of awful.
Yeah, definitely it's easy to become a habit as well. And in terms of like other tips for eating, you can definitely, it's something that I do is I usually just carry like a bag of like emergency snacks, so like granola bars, chocolates, candy. So whenever you do feel like hypoglycemic, or if you do need like a shot of sugar, then it's always there for you.
If this is a money saving hack, is I find like Starbucks can really eat away at your money. And so if you were like, sometimes you need a shot of caffeine, I should bring a packet, but I have these little like mix packets, like Korean, Korean mix packets of like coffee, and then I just like leave some of these in my backpack, and then you like bring
those
around
like pre-mixes, like coffee mixes.
Yeah, and then you like save money because it's so cheap, and then you get your coffee. So yeah, that's another one to go with Jamie, is like carrying around your emergency snack, carrying around your emergency coffee. Yeah. And emergency money in case you need to buy food. I think that's one thing I would say, like that relationship I had towards money and food. I was always trying to save money and be frugal because some of y'all know student life is a little bit expensive, especially when you're busy and you're not really finding time to like work part-time. I definitely am learning to be I've learned to be forgiving to myself. So this is what happened when I was an undergrad, is I was too cheap to buy food. And so like all of first year I was like I was refusing to buy any food because UBC is like so expensive, right? It's like $10 for like a sandwich. That kind of sucks. There's like nothing in it. And so I was like, I don't have money, I don't want to spend money. And then so I was like, I was getting like super, super thin, unhealthily, not healthily. And I was like, this is like, and then my stomach would feel bad because it's like, get like, it's like acid reflux or GERD, if you want to be formal about it. I'm getting GERD. And so I got GERD. And that's when I really learned, like, this is really bad because this is, sometimes it is, if I think one thing to do is now I learned that you can plan ahead, and I would bring an extra meal, like maybe if I think I want to stay at school, bring dinner. But learning to be forgiving myself, like if I really think I'm hungry, instead of like cheaping out, it's okay to like splurge a little bit and buy myself food. Yeah, sounds intuitive. Some people probably don't need this tip, but if you're like me, you're also cheap and you're also like kind of care about self-care, please be kind to yourself food-wise.
And there's also a lot of lunch and learn, a lot of club meetings that offer free food. So yeah, there's those opportunities as well. So I guess this wraps our episode on self-care. It's really important, as we mentioned throughout the video, to make sure to take time to take care of yourself. So if you have any other questions, feel free to just let us know in the comments, and we'll be back with another episode. See you then. Bye.